Well, thank you for that, David. And I then pass the microphone over to Roger.
Thank you very much indeed, Rory. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today at the Freedom Zone. And as you've heard, I was the chairman of the Freedom Association. The Freedom Zone actually started under my chairmanship, and I've constantly tried to claim credit for it. But of course, the credit is actually due to this man, Simon Richards, down here in the front row. I'm delighted to see it going from strength to strength. I am also delighted to be sharing a platform with MPs of the quality of David Nuttall and Philip Davis, and indeed to be sharing a platform, of course, with Tim and Gawain as well. And what I am not here to do today is to tell you that I am more Eurosceptic than David or more Eurosceptic than Philip, because I think that would be a pointless debate, and so I don't propose to go down that route. Although I may touch on the issue of whether the Conservative Party or UKIP is best placed to make the case, or indeed is making the case. And in that context, I would say that I was a member of the Conservative Party for something like 40 years. I was a Conservative MEP for 12 and a half years, and for most of that 12 and a half years, and especially latterly, I had people from UKIP getting in touch saying, look, you're obviously with us on policy, why on earth don't you come across? And for a long time I was saying, well, when Conservatives were in opposition, I was saying, well, yes, but you wait and see when we have a Conservative Prime Minister, it'll be different then. And I was saying we must work within the Conservative Party and try and bring it in the right direction. And I'm afraid the reason I made my move earlier this year to UKIP was quite simply that there is only so long you can go on making those arguments, and I felt that I wasn't bringing the Conservative Party with me. Let me qualify that, though, because as David has rightly said, Conservative Party members, in his experience and in my experience, are overwhelmingly Eurosceptic. They selected me 3 times in the East Midlands, because they liked what I said. Initially, they liked what I said about Europe, which was quite clear and uncompromising. Last time round, they also liked what I said about climate and energy. So I was very comfortable with the views of Conservative Party members. What I was not comfortable with was the position of Conservative Party leaders. I had this rather curious situation that I left a party where I agreed with the members but fundamentally disagreed with the leadership, and joined a party where I both agreed with the members and the leaders, and that was a salutary experience. Now, there are some people in UKIP who will tell you that renegotiation of our relationship with Europe is not possible. They will say that any renegotiation would require the agreement of the other 26 member states, so that will not be forthcoming, so we can stop thinking about renegotiation, it's a nonsense. I don't necessarily share that view. I take the view that if the government, with a Conservative Prime Minister, were to prepare a very clear and robust shopping list, and take that robust shopping list to Brussels, and say, right, this is what the British people want, perhaps after a general election where those propositions had been part of the manifesto. And if that Prime Minister were to sit down with our friend Mr. Barroso and to say, either we get what is in this shopping list, or we will put it to the British people that we should leave and we will have a referendum to leave, I suspect that we would get at least a great deal of attention, and we might well get agreement to our shopping list. However, we know that that isn't going to happen, because we know that our Prime Minister has said there is no question of an in-out referendum, and Britain benefits by being in the European Union. I would love to have that debate with Mr. Cameron to understand why he thinks we benefit. He insists that the single market is an important benefit to British exporters. I do not myself see any single benefit of European Union membership which could not be achieved by a simple free trade agreement. And I would point to the situation of Canada vis-à-vis the United States. Canada is an independent, democratic country with its own currency, which enjoys a very friendly and profitable trading relationship with its larger neighbour. And I see no reason why Britain should not be an independent, democratic country with its own currency and its own government, enjoying free trade and a profitable relationship with the European Union, or what remains of it after we've left. But I would warn about the current comments being made by the Prime Minister. We all remember the Prime Minister's assertion, of course, that he would give 2007 Sun newspaper a cast iron guarantee of a referendum. It was only after he became Prime Minister, or sorry, just before he became Prime Minister, that he said, well, of course, that was conditional upon our not having ratified the Lisbon Treaty, but of course, now that we have ratified it, there can be no question of a referendum, which is rather curious. Because if you consider the only referendum on Europe we have ever had in 1975, that of course was a post facto referendum. We had joined under Ted Heath's leadership, we had joined the then common market, and then there was an election at which Harold Wilson came to power. Harold Wilson had opposed the common market settlement and said, I will go and negotiate a new dispensation, and if I can do that successfully, I will put it to the British people in a referendum. He went away and produced a couple of concessions which were in fact nugatory. I can't even remember what they were now, and they are long since forgotten by history, but he was able to wave them in his hand like Chamberlain and peace in our time, we have a new settlement. And he came back, and on that basis he supported a yes vote in a referendum, which only those of us who are over 58 years old, and amongst whom I number myself, actually were able to vote, and I apologise here and now to all of you for the fact that I voted the wrong way at the time. But there is a precedent for a post facto referendum. You cannot say, because this has been ratified, we cannot now have a referendum. And what are we now promised? We're now promised the opportunity for a new settlement, perhaps introducing some rather strange measure where there would be a different budget for the Eurozone and the rest of the European Union. And if we can negotiate something that looks a bit like that, it will be put to the British people. How will it be put to the British people? Well, perhaps in a referendum, or perhaps in a general election. We're not even being offered. We were denied the referendum for which there was a cast iron guarantee. We're now being told that there may be a referendum. There may be a referendum where the choice will be essentially a choice between the status quo or more of the same. And that is no choice at all. So I agree 100% with David. We must have an in-out referendum. That is what the public will understand. That is what the public want. And that can re-establish the independence and democracy of our country. That is the position of the party which I am now a part of and am privileged to represent. It is certainly the policy of sound people like David, like Philip, like Douglas Carswell, like folk of that kind. Sadly, it is not the policy of the Conservative Party. Yeah.